Daily Detroit is brought to you in large part by our members at patreon.com/dailydetroit. That's patreon.com/dailydetroit. Your support is crucial because local media needs local support to survive. Thank you very much, and let's get on to the show. Welcome to Monday, friends. I am Jer Stays, and this is your Daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. Today, we're talking about the Music Hall. There's a major expansion in the works. Vincent Paul, president and artistic director, joins me. Let's hop into that conversation. Welcome to Daily Detroit.
Hi, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. You know, the Music Hall is, I hate to say underappreciated, but it's not right on Woodward. It's a great space for so many things over the years in Detroit. And when I saw the news that you're going to be doing this expansion, I wanted to talk to you a bit about it because, as we were talking about off air a bit, I'm kind of a nerd, not to put you all in the nerd category, but between architecture, music, community, all those other kinds of nerderies that I have, this project kind of checks all those boxes for me.
I agree with you. You know, Music Hall is probably the finest example of Art Deco architecture in the city. And we have over 40 million visitors come right down Madison Avenue, you know, whether it's a football game or an opera or a concert. You know, we have 3 stadiums and 7 theaters essentially adjacent to each other. But I think a lot of those 40 million are kind of driving by and they're not really noticing this treasure of the Music Hall sitting right, you know, on their right or left. And by putting this new 21st century design building directly next to it, you know what it's going to do, amongst other things? It's going to raise awareness of this architectural treasure called the Music Hall.
I think it was an interesting choice to do that because, you know, you can't replicate the artistry of when was the Music Hall built, after all, if I remember, trying to remember?
1928. We're 95 years, you know. You've been driving by it your whole life.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And the thing is that it's a beautiful building, but it seems like you've, as you mentioned, you kind of went a little bit of a different direction with the addition, but on the other hand, it is 2023, not the 1920s. And to try to echo that, I feel like would have maybe gone more sideways than I think some people would appreciate.
Right. You know, Historic would agree with you. You know, when we have many conversations with the Historic Commission, they don't want us to try to replicate the Music Hall. You know, we see this really as Detroit's musical history, you know, on your left and Detroit's, you know, musical future on your right. I think the two buildings contrast each other so that you notice both of them. They create awareness for both of them.
Can we talk a little bit about the architect and kind of the design? Because it's very illuminated. When you get into the more detailed renderings, you realize this thing is going to glow.
It glows. That's a good point. The whole building is very bespoke. You know, there's not one square foot that is alike from another square foot. The architect, Todd Williams, he's maybe the dominant, you know, architect of our day. He's doing the Obama Presidential Library in Chicago right now. He just finished doing Geffen Hall at Lincoln Center in New York. And he's from Detroit, but he's never done anything here in Detroit. So in our thousands of hours of conversation about this new structure, we needed to fit a lot of different programming into this building. And since it's also underappreciated that Detroit is the only recognized UNESCO City of Design in the country. And it has a lot to do with our architecture. You know, so if we're going to build a building and it's going to become an icon, we're going to be joining, you know, the pantheon of Howard Cranes and Saarinen and all the great architects. So we needed to have the preeminent architect working today, and we got him.
Yeah. And this is a pretty sizable expansion. And what kind of programs are going to be in this? Because I think people forget that the Music Hall is, and has been for a number of years, more than just a performance venue.
Well, I know it looks like a theater and it smells like a theater, but we always looked at it much more as a community center. Our mission really is about the city of Detroit. So if you look at the arc of our programming, you know, a famous man once said to me, Vince, Detroit isn't one city. It's really 25 towns. So what we try to do is reflect those 25 towns with our programming. And you'll find everything from the National Arab Orchestra to Tyler Perry plays. You'll see Bollywood performances. And over the course of years, what we're doing is we're kind of having people who live in their different silos are bumping into each other in one central place. And that really works there. When I started here in 2006, I'm a Detroit native, but most of my career was in New York. And I wanted to come back and really elevate Detroit. And the way to elevate Detroit was to put everybody together, to find common platforms for us all to work on. And the performing arts really had a role to play there by having this arc of programming that reflected all the different elements of society in one place. What we were doing was gluing folks together or finding common platforms. We went from a little $3 million a year playhouse on the corner of Rush and Madison to $14 million annual. And it was simply because we engaged everybody. There's 5.5 million people that live in Southeast Michigan. And in 2006, I would say 1 million of them were willing to come downtown. And then Detroit got better and 2 million people were willing to come downtown. Now you'll be hard pressed to find anybody that's not willing to come downtown. So the new building is kind of something in sequence. Okay, we've got our 5 million. Now, how do we serve the local community, but also attract the national community, the international community? You want to go from 40 million visitors a year. How about 80 million? How do we do that? I think that we need to find a place to engage, some sort of building that is centrally located. If you look at the location of the new building, no matter how you triangulate Southeast Michigan and the city of Detroit, this is the most equitable location for everybody. It's the most convenient place for everybody. It doesn't lean west, doesn't lean east, it doesn't lean north. So the location is crucial. And I might add, it has the best public transportation. You've got the People Mover, and you've got the Q line, and you've got every bus route coming into Rosa Parks. You have all of the arteries. So the location was very, very important. And also, I might add, of those 40 million people that are coming through the district, people are people, Jer. They tend to paint all 136 square miles with this 1,000 feet of Madison. They just
It's so
do.
true. So true.
So this 1,000 feet needs to look really, really good. And so the building needed to be beautiful and eye-catching and iconic and represent the city of Detroit from an international all the way down to a neighborhood. There's a lot of thought that's gone into it. I would say 10 years of thought has gone into, well, what does this building do?
It has been a long time coming as someone who's watched some of this stuff. I personally am very glad that you eliminated a surface parking lot. That's always a win in my book, personally.
Definitely.
It makes it adds to the urban fabric. I'm really intrigued by the fact that you look at this as a national project, something that will draw people in. I really appreciate that because true cities are hubs of commerce, of art, of all those things. And I feel like if Detroit's to succeed, it cannot be insular. It has to be open. It has to be a place where everybody from wherever they're at gathers, because that's the power of cities. That's been the power of cities since the ancient days. You go back to the Egyptians, you go back to the founding of human culture. Cities are where people gathered, and that's the power of Detroit and cities like it.
Oh, our downtown is excellent. We have, some 22 million, according to Visit Detroit, we have like 20 million business visitors. But here's the rub. If you don't know anybody, it's very difficult to engage in the city. Yeah, I have a lot of touring artists, everybody from Jackson Browne to Shaka Khan. And they'll ask me, hey, Vince, where's the music? Detroit's a music town. Where is it? And I'm like, well, it's everywhere. I'm like, okay, just be more specific. So really, I think that this building is a portal. You can come into town, whether you're coming in from Farmington Hills or you're coming in from Germany. You can come into town and not know a soul and go to this building, and you will see on display in the Welcome Center and the all-venue ticketing center, you'll see Detroit, revealed to you. All of its attractions will be represented in one place. it's really like a thank you. That's what I needed. I just needed a way to engage. We're solving a problem, and at the same time, we're promoting all of our attractions and all of our culture and all of our excellence. There's not an organization or a museum or a performing arts company that we won't promote. I like to think of this building as you, Detroit. This building is you. And I might add, we're going to hold workshops during this building period. There'll be 30 months of building. We're going to open in October of 2026. And we'll hold workshops of, okay, how do I engage in this new theater, in this new building, in this new facility? That's one mission point. And there's basically 12 businesses that have been contemplated over all of these years. The building does break down. So sure, there's the Welcome Center and the all, venue ticketing center where you could buy a ticket to, an opera or a football game or, catch a ride to the DIA or Motown Museum. But there's also a music store there. Music Hall does a lot of music education. We're a major service provider in the DPSCD. So we've learned a thing or two from parents about where can my daughter continue learning drums? And we're kind of like, oh, that's kind of hard to answer, because a lot of our music education, it's been marginalized over the years. So there's a nonprofit music academy, that's really going to shore up that infrastructure of our music excellence. I mean, we take it for granted here, but Detroit has produced more performing artists of world renown than any community in history. I know it's a mouthful. And I know that we like to be humble, but it's simply the truth. If you really take your Aretha Franklins and your Bob Segers and your Iggy Pops and your Eminems and your Jack Whites and the whole Motown folks, and you add them all together, there is no other city that has produced that much music. And music, if nothing, it's a cultural influencer. We've been influencing the world with our music. We invented techno here. Is there one-stop shopping to find all of these things? I think that that's what our community and certainly our visitors have been asking for years. So you're going to see that. You mentioned that dilapidated surface parking lot. It's a drag. You can't have that right in the middle of the theater district, So transforming that into something great. There's also a great network of developed alleys that are happening in the city of Detroit. And so we're taking this dilapidated alley that's next to the music hall between the new building and the old, and we're putting in a $3 million music exhibition, Alley of Stars. I think that we need to honor all of our music legends. They've done so much for the city. And I'm not exactly seeing them around, thank God for Motown Museum. But we also have rock, and we have the techno, and we have jazz, gospel,
I think about when I go to downtown Memphis and places like that. You can see a lot of the history there. And Detroit has a ton of music history. And I'm glad to see this welcome center because that's something we've been missing for a while. When I travel, a welcome center, I think, is a really important thing for this entire mix. And all of this to me shows what you can do when somebody who's working with intention and is looking to get the proper resources together, because there's so much talent in Detroit and our region, and it just needs that kind of support. And that's what I see this kind of as a manifestation of.
Yeah, it has to be nonprofit, because if you think of Madison, it's kind of like Checkpoint Charlie. You've kind of got commercial real estate to the south of us, and you've got commercial real estate to the north of us. But this most important artery here, you've got the Opera House and Grand Valley and the Detroit Athletic Club and Music Hall. And we're all guided by our boards of trustees. And so we might make different decisions than commercial or for-profit operators would make. You've got community buy-in and guidance as to like, what is the programming and what does it look like? Because we've got to put our best foot forward. And that might not pay the bills sometimes. Sometimes you're going to have to raise money to do the right thing. So the new building will be guided by the community. It's also guided by, our elected officials here in the city. It's all inclusive building because we can't really move the needle on Detroit's perception nationally unless we put all of our assets together and we put that big foot forward. This is all of our stuff. And you put that all together, and Memphis and Nashville and New Orleans, who claim to be music, hey, they're great, but they don't compare to what Detroit has done and will do.
It's about telling our story better in a lot of ways. You're right, that humility strikes in, and some people get this idea that we can't do better. I've heard it before where there's like this defeatist thing, and I like a fresh vision where it's like Detroit does deserve to be on these stages. We just have to tell people and make it so that their first impression here is an amazing one.
You can be humble to a fault, Jer. You know, that is doable. And I do believe that this is the run-up. Detroit is stepping back out onto the world stage. You know, I think of Michigan Central and the driverless technology that's being developed, and of course, both software and hardware. If you think of the autos, here comes Detroit, everybody. And so to respond to that, this building also, as you see Detroit elevate and elevate, the next thing in sequence, it would make sense, is a building like this. Now, there's other elements in that building, such as the concert hall and the recital hall and nightclub and event space. And, you know, Visit Detroit's very excited because we have a mid-sized conference space that we're lacking right now. You know, if you think about it, we have the big Huntington Place, you know, holds 30,000 people. But then you kind of break down to the hotels and their breakout rooms. What we need is that really centrally located. You can do 800 dentists from around the country, you know, when they have their annual conference. Those kind of conferences. And there's lots of them. And it's not just the economic impact, and it's big. It's awareness of Detroit. It's the familiarity with Detroit. You can go to Berlin and you will find 3 products in your home that were designed and manufactured here in Detroit. And probably Ma Cherie Amour is like playing on your radio. You know, that's Detroit. Now, don't you want to get to know where that came from? Really, I think Detroit's, here we come, everybody. Detroit's stepping back out onto that world stage, and we will be a world capital again. Again, in very short order. So we have to respond to that with some of these things, such as the Music Hall Center.
Well, I appreciate all of this energy. I was just sitting back because you've got so much good energy around this one. There's a lot to like about this project. As I said, taking over that surface parking lot, making a truly kind of city-oriented space that, you know, you could see this in any major city in America and have that kind of density of programming, of extending what the music hall does, all that other stuff. So I really appreciate your time on Daily Detroit, Paul, and your energy behind this. And when is this thing, or when are we supposed to see some shovels in the ground and this thing start rising?
Yeah, you'll see it in the first quarter of 24, just after the new year. We're ready to go. We're ready to go.
That's awesome.
But this is probably the most expensive building per square foot ever built in the state of Michigan. To give you an idea.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, what's the total price on this one? $122 million?
Yep. It's 2 floors underground, 5 floors up.
So that's how the 7 goes, because I was looking at the renderings.
Yep.
And I was like, I count 5. Okay.
That's right. And Music Hall is 7, but our ceilings are very high in the new building. So that's how it matches.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time today, Vince Paul. I'm excited to see what's going on over there, and I will be watching, and hopefully we'll be doing a live podcast from this new facility when it's done.
It has all the technical capability you would ever want or dream of. Thank you, Jer.
Well, how about that for your Monday? Hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you've got feedback, 313-789-3211 or dailydetroit@gmail.com. Remember that we do Daily Detroit every single day of the week. We will talk to Fletcher Sharp tomorrow. With that, I'm Jer Stays. Remember that you are somebody. We'll see you around Detroit.